recording, and I want to welcome everybody to it's our Wednesday, October 28th meeting of the Garden Club. And we are joined today by a volunteer of the UC Master Gardener program, Janice Moody, who will share some of her background in a moment. But I wanted to share all with you a bit about the Master Gardener program itself. So the UC Master Gardeners are trained and certified by the University of California to provide community service and educational outreach that helps home gardeners and community orgs like ourselves garden sustainably and create a healthy environment. They're trained by UC scientists and other experts and go through a rigorous certification program, and it's overseen at a county level. So actually, the Master Gardener program that serves San Francisco also serves San Mateo County, and I know I've directed some of their resources to you all in the past. But if you're not familiar with them outside of our presentation today, I'll share out a link afterwards. They have some great online resources and other future classes and offerings, most of which are free. And without, I don't think I need to say anything more. I'm going to let Janice introduce herself, and then she's going to talk about pests in the garden.
Okay, everybody, welcome. My name is Janice Moody, and I've been a Master Gardener since 2010, and I love it. I hope you all, if you're interested in gardening and want to learn more and share your knowledge, then I encourage you to also become a Master Gardener. And it's like a 15-week course, 1 day a week for 15 weeks. And then you take a little test at the end and you're certified, and then you get to share your knowledge and keep learning because you have to educate yourself continuously. And you also give back by volunteering so many hours a year. So it's a well worthwhile endeavor, and I hope you can join us one of these days. So let me get started with the talk today, which is on rats, raccoons, and squirrels and control in the garden. My experience with these critters is, well, I would say my experience with raccoons is more in depth than my experience with rats and squirrels, because I grew up on 6 acres in Pescadero, or I lived on 6 acres in Pescadero for most of my life. Never saw a rat. And I know you find that unbelievable, but never saw a rat. And I had a wooded area, so they just stayed in the woods, and I never encountered one. Although I encountered several raccoons, especially my dogs encountered them. And squirrels were just few and far between because I didn't have any oak trees nearby. But when I did see a squirrel, it was a native squirrel and not one of the eastern squirrels that we have in our gardens these days in the urban environments. I will first discuss raccoons, or excuse me, rats, and then raccoons, because that seemed to be the order of priority. And then thirdly, I'll discuss squirrels, but only if there's time, because I realize that we are limited in time today to 50 minutes. And I'll be breaking for questions after each topic. So let me get started with rats. First of all, I think Winston alluded to the fact that we practice IPM practices, meaning that integrated pest management. So we try to solve pest problems while minimizing risk to people and the environment. So that's our goal. Our goal is not to poison everything around, because that has collateral damage and that's not good for the environment. So the problems with poisons is, as I just mentioned, collateral damage. You have other animals eating the poisoned animals, and they can be affected and die from it. There's a risk of developing resistance to them. It also pollutes groundwater and washes into our waterways and oceans. You can accidentally poison a child with rat poison or any kind of poison. And then if you do happen to kill a rat and it ends up in your walls, they smell. So this is not something you want to really do. You try not to set bait in your house, especially. Okay, next up, rats. Basically, in the urban environments in the city, you're going to encounter 2 types of rats, and I realize some of you don't like looking at pictures of rats, but these are live rats. These are not dead rats, so I hope you can tolerate it, because you kind of should distinguish between the two types. We've got roof rats, and they're both foreign. They're both imported here off ships and elsewhere. We've got the roof rats, which are darker and smaller in nature than the Norway rats, which are larger and more brown in color. And the smaller ones are very good at climbing. And so they're the ones that you see on the telephone wires and climbing up steep surfaces. And then the Norway rats are the heavier ones, and they tend to stick closer to the ground and burrow in the ground. So the roof rats live in shrubs, trees, ivy, and attics, whereas the Norway rats live in basements and wood piles and garden debris and in the ground even. They both share a food source, but they don't interbreed. And both gain entry to structures by gnawing, climbing, swimming through sewers. And one is a better swimmer. The Norway rat is a better swimmer than the roof rat, but they can swim for long distances. So keep that in mind. And so the roof rat will nest off the ground in trees, as I said, and the Norway rats create burrows and nest oftentimes in the ground. And they all forage at night. So if you want to see a rat, you really need to go outside with your flashlight if you really want to see a rat, because they're only out at night. To monitor if you have rats, if you have a lemon tree or a citrus tree in your backyard and you notice the peel being eaten away like this, and I guess I didn't activate my, there, now I think I've activated my laser pointer. So, so here you see the eaten peel. So that more than likely is a rat. And also if you see droppings around, and here in the middle is for comparison purposes is rice granules, rice grains. And on the left you've got mice droppings, and on the right you have rat droppings. So the bigger the dropping, the bigger the animal, basically. And if you see remnants of nests in firewood stacks or behind boxes in garages, then you probably have a rat. If you see burrows near damaged vegetables in the garden, you probably got a Norway rat. If you hear noises in your attic just after dark, then you may have a rat up there. It could also be a raccoon though, and even a possum possibly. I don't think you've got possums so much in the city though. If you see a drowned rat in your swimming pool, that's a good indication you've got rats. And you can verify by going out with a flashlight at night and scanning fences, the top rails of fences, because they'll be crawling along there or along the bottom of a building. They tend to stick to buildings and fences just for predator, just to avoid predators. So, now this is how steep a surface they can climb. So just keep this in mind. If there's any texture on the surface, they're going to cling to it and climb, as this Norway rat is doing right here. And they also can climb these very narrow wires. So just keep that in mind when you want to limit access to your building. Just look to see what is attached to your building and if it's climbable at all. And keep also in mind, they can jump 3 feet up in the air and 4 feet horizontally. So any branches you may have near your home, if you don't want them in your home, then keep those branches away from your building. They can also climb vertical pipes and conduit up to 3 inches in diameter. This is what the damage they can do. They can gnaw through wood this thick. And even concrete, they've been known to gnaw through concrete if they really need to get out or in to an area. So I guess they've even gnawed through aluminum sheeting, although I find that hard to believe, but just keep in mind they've got powerful teeth. And they can burrow straight down to a depth of 4 feet. And here's a nest, for instance, of a Norway rat down here about as deep as 4 feet in the ground. And they can enter openings slightly larger than a ½ an inch in diameter. So if you've got sweeps under your door sweep, make sure that it's very low to the ground and maybe even touching the ground, but no more than a ½ inch. And if you want to keep mice out, then it's got to be a ¼ inch or less, because mice can squeeze through a ¼ inch. First, we're going to talk about habitat modification as a way of ridding yourself of rats. So remove potential shelters or paths, and ivy is a big shelter for rats. And ivy is also invasive. So there's 2 reasons to get rid of the rats. Get rid of your ivy, get rid of your any pampas grass, and if you have pampas grass, you shouldn't because it's invasive. It's a California invasive plant. So please get rid of any pampas grass you may have, or old agapanthus. They tend to make nests underneath the old dead part of the agapanthus. Get rid of any lumber, firewood, debris in your backyard. And as I said before, keep your tree branches at least 3 to 4 feet from your roof. Remove food sources. Now, if you feed your dog outside, be sure you bring that bowl in after you feed the dog. Don't leave food outside, and that includes bird seed. Even if you have one of those bird feeders that claims it doesn't drop bird seed, 9 times out of 10, it will drop bird seed. So just keep that in mind. Drop fruit from your fruit trees, pick that up daily, and then cover your compost bins. I've never really had an issue with rats in my compost bin. I don't think I put anything in there that they really enjoy eating. So, you know, it's like I've got a zucchini on the top of my compost right now. It's not covered and nothing has eaten it. So I think it largely depends on their taste as to what you put in that compost. You never should put food that's cooked in your compost bin or any animal products in your compost bin. And if you avoid just doing that and putting yard waste and leaves and your kitchen scraps that are raw, then I think you're not going to attract as many animals to your compost bin. And rodent proofing your house is really key. Now this vent on the left here looked like this is my sister's vent in her house, and all of the vents look like this. So after time they do rust, and then animals start pulling on them, and this is what happens, and then you end up with raccoons or rats or whatever underneath your house. So there's some easy replacements to that. There's this PVC plastic one that she used to put on top. And there's also these metal ones that are pretty tight fitting, and they're only 1/4 inch in size. And that's what you should be choosing, is 1/4 inch galvanized hardware mesh or plastic, because you want to also keep the mice out. And then your vents on your roof, there's also vents you can place on your roof vents as well. Any opening that's open, you know, to the air, you want to cover on your roof. You also want to make sure you don't have any large gaps underneath your kitchen sinks or elsewhere. You can use copper mesh. It's better than stainless steel, and steel wool actually will rust. So this copper mesh is made for this purpose. And there's also something called a rodent barrier kit, and that is stainless steel based, and so that can be stuffed in there. I suppose they could push through that if they were really anxious to get into your home. So you could even put a mortar of some kind along with it, or you can try this foam product here, which is a pest block. There's several pest blocks out there that are foam based, and supposedly the animals won't chew through it. So the recommended materials, I'll let you look through this. I won't read it all because I've already mentioned a lot of it, but basically the wire that's galvanized, 19 gauge or 24 gauge, woven wire mesh. Yeah, I think I've basically covered all those. And I think you probably can get a copy of this presentation, and you can all read this and review it later on as well. And then rodent proofing windows and doors, as I said before, with door sweeps, make sure they're either sweeping the floor entirely and closing off any space, or no more than 1/4 inch if you want to keep mice and rats out. And then your window screens, make sure they're in good state of repair. The wire ones can not be eaten through, as the nylon ones, of course, those can be damaged by rats and mice. So make sure you get a stainless steel woven wire mesh for your screens if you're having issues with animals getting. They're the only native squirrel we have in California. But in the urban environments, you're more likely seeing the eastern squirrels, which I'll describe later. So here are the two on the top are the eastern fox squirrel, reddish tail and belly, and then the eastern gray squirrel, smaller and narrower tail than the western squirrel. So this tail is not as fluffy as the western tree squirrel. And but both of them then can become melanistic, and that's a genetic mutation. And so you may oftentimes see black squirrels in your neighborhood instead of these color squirrels. And this one on the bottom is the eastern fox squirrel that is becoming melanistic, not entirely black yet. And then over here, this one, the eastern gray squirrel, is entirely black. And even experts, I'm told, have trouble distinguishing between the two. And it's kind of important to know which of these eastern squirrels you might have, because there are different permits or non-permits, I should say, in terms of controlling them. You can actually lethally trap the eastern fox squirrel because they're considered a public nuisance, but you can't do that to the eastern gray squirrel without a permit. So I'll be discussing that further on, but it's kind of would behoove you to try to figure out which type of squirrels you have if they're really becoming a nuisance. And again, here's their differences up close. Western gray squirrel face is no orange tinge at all on it. Eastern fox squirrel, they're orangey brown face, and they have an orange belly as well. And then the eastern gray squirrel has an orangey brown face. Now, to manage squirrels, you want to monitor them, which is pretty easy because they're diurnal, they're active during the day. Try to identify the species as best you can. We're going to talk about eliminating food sources and blocking nesting areas, and then I'm going to discuss exclusion and ways you can exclude them from your backyard and your produce as well. And then I'm going to also mention trapping and hunting, but hunting is not allowed in San Francisco, so I probably shouldn't even bring that up. And poison baiting them is never allowed, regardless. So you should never try to poison squirrels at all. As I said, they're active during the day and sometimes active at twilight. They're primarily arboreal, if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly, excuse me, but they usually stay in trees, but they do forage on the ground. And they do not hibernate. They prefer to eat fungi, seeds, nuts, and fruits, but they'll eat whatever's available, even from your garbage can. They can jump 8 feet between branches, fences, and roofs. So, we talked about rats jumping 3 or 4 feet this way, and then raccoons 5 feet. Now, if you want to keep squirrels off of your trees, for instance, your fruit trees, you need 8-foot distance between branches to do that, or between your roof line, so that they can't jump onto that tree. They'll nest in forks of trees, hollow tree trunks, and your attic. So if you hear, that's another thing I mentioned, that if you hear noises in your attic, that could also be a squirrel besides a rat or a raccoon. So you've got a few options there. And again, bird feeders are not a great idea. They do have these ones that supposedly keep the squirrels away, but they'll spin. And there's a link to the spinning one right here. And it's kind of funny to watch because the squirrel will hang on for dear life and being spun around like this, like crazy. But if you want to discourage squirrels, the best thing to do is just not to have a bird feeder. And we also mentioned that it also attracts all the squirrels, rodents, and raccoons to your yard as well. There is this hot bird seed that some people have found effective, and it contains cayenne pepper, And apparently it does not hurt the birds at all, but squirrels do not like it. So that's a way of discouraging them if you must feed the birds. There's electrified fence option. This is what a fellow Master Gardener did. She just was so fed up with the squirrels eating everything in her garden and on her trees. She put this little squirrel fence up. It has a wire across the top of it, which is hard to see right at this point, but there's a wire that goes all the way around it, and it doesn't kill the squirrel, it just discourages them. It just shocks them, and then they fall off and they go on their merry way. And I'll describe it a little bit more in detail by showing you the chargers. Here's a fence charger that you plug in. They also have a solar one. I think this is a solar one. This is the one you plug in. And you can disarm it to go into your gated area. It's not an issue, but it comes up from the ground, goes up here. I'm not going to go into that into detail, but just know that these are options open to you. And again, the metal tree collar, as we discussed, for the prevention of the rats from climbing your trees. This works as well. But make sure it's placed 6 to 8 feet from the ground, and it's 2 feet wide in width, and that it expands with the growth of the tree. Make sure you let it expand with the tree growth. Now, these are squirrels that can be trapped with a permit. The eastern gray squirrel and the western gray squirrel. If both of them are a real nuisance and they're eating everything in your backyard, then you can obtain a permit to trap them. But you have to get it from the California Department of Fish and Game to lethally trap them. And you can catch and release in some allowed areas with a permit, and they would instruct you as to where they could be released. And please don't hunt them if you're in the city. That's not allowed. In Pescadero, yeah, you can do that in Pescadero, but not in San Francisco. And so this is the one I mentioned before, the eastern fox squirrel, and no permit is needed to trap it because it's considered a nuisance. And catch and release is not allowed. So if you caught it live, if you live trapped it, you would have to euthanize it. And you could not euthanize it without a professional license, excuse me. You would have to lethally trap them with a trap that actually kills them instantly. Here are some common traps. This Squirrelinator live catch trap is a live trap, and then you have to euthanize them with carbon dioxide, and you need a special professional permit to do that. So that's probably not a good option for you in the city. This tube trap is a lethal trap. You can place it on a branch or on the top of a fence, and that actually works pretty well. And that you could use that for your eastern fox squirrels. This electronic rodent zapper will also work for squirrels. Just make sure that you're trapping the right type of squirrel, because otherwise you need a permit to lethally trap any of the other ones. And the best bait for tree squirrels is nuts, such as whole peanuts with peanut butter. And so that's it. Those are my references that you can refer to later on. And then acknowledgements here, and this is where you can find us. So we used to have hours over at the San Francisco Botanical Garden, live hours where you could walk in between 10:30 and 2 o'clock, and we could answer your questions free of charge. Now, of course, we have to do that virtually. So just feel free to email us at any point in time, and one of us from the helpline will be getting back to you during our hours of operation, which are from home now. So describe your problem in the email. You can even call us, and we'll answer the phone during those hours. So just to know that we're out there and we're always willing to help. So I guess that's it for squirrels. If there's any additional questions, you can take them at this time.
Yeah, thank you very much, Janice. I really appreciate you taking the time. I know this entailed a lot of preparation for you. One of our participants in the Chinese-speaking garden club wanted to know, are there any kinds of plants that can prevent or deter rats or raccoons?
I am not aware of them other than mint. Mint plants, they tend, raccoons I don't think care about mint that much. Wouldn't deter them. But rats and rodents don't like mint. And if you plant that in your garden, it's hard to contain it because it keeps spreading and spreading and spreading. So I would suggest putting it in a pot to control its growth. That could help, but I'm not really aware of any other things that would discourage their presence.
Got it. Thanks. Any other questions from any of our participants about raccoons? Oh, Anna is asking, can you see the references? So Anna, what I'll do afterwards is I can share out the references and contact page via email. Would that do the job for you?
Yes.
Okay.
Especially with raccoons.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Well, we got about 5 minutes left. The one thing I wanted to share to folks is I just realized that our next meeting would be on the 25th of November, and that's the day before Thanksgiving. I'm not going anywhere, so I'm happy to meet them, but I might actually advise that we meet the week before, which would be Wednesday, the 18th, if my calendar is correct. I can email folks and check in, but does anyone have any immediate feelings? Does Wednesday the 18th sound okay? You can give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down, or you can tell me. Thumbs up. Give me a thumbs down if that doesn't sound okay.
Fine by me.
Okay. Seems for the most part I've got thumbs up. So that's what we'll plan on. And I can look at what our other subjects people were interested in, but does anyone have any specific other things they want to be a subject for our next garden club meeting where I can either get a guest or present on?
I should, let me mention something, Winston.
Yeah.
I have a business, Seascapes Garden Design, and also the Seascape Succulents Nursery. So I have two businesses, and they focus primarily in drought tolerant perennials and succulents. And so I do a presentation on succulent gardening as well, if anyone would like me to do that.
Oh, I think
you have to mute her.
Yeah. I think she meant to switch to the Chinese language.
Okay. Yeah.
I think a lot of people would be interested in that succulent gardening presentation. So maybe you and I can talk later, Janice, if you'd like to join us for the next one.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. I'll follow up with you. Are there any other thoughts or subjects that people are interested in learning or discussing for the future that I can research or bring a presenter on?
Remember, I talked to you about air plants.
Oh, air plants. Great. I will make a note of that. Cool. And I mean, we could also have a segment of our time where we just have a garden update where people share and present what they've been working on and what they've been struggling with, kind of what we did at the beginning. I think that might be fun. Hi, Linda.
About planting for the fall.
Fall planting. Okay.
For, I don't know, soil preparation. I know there are talks on coming up on through the Master Gardeners.
Planting and air plants, air and succulents. Okay. Anything else or?
Tool maintenance. I got 2 pairs of dull pruners.
That reminds me. So I need to still follow up on this, but I've been given a number of plants by one of our own, Carrie, including some basil, some Thai basil, and a bunch of other ones. I'll make a list and I'll share it out, but if anyone is interested in taking some of those plants, there are lots of cuttings and seedlings, they're open to anybody in the garden club. And my next project related to the garden club, we'll see if maybe we can get an outdoor space with some sort of covering reserved, and maybe we could organize a seed and plant swap.
Hi, 李姑娘你好。
Hi, Leon. You might want
想
to
問點樣捉
change.
到地鼠啊？好嘅，
I'll let Leon follow up. with
地
you,
鼠
Tina.
有一種嘢可以中咗佢唔嚟噶喎。
I'll let Caina follow up with Deng and Leon.
Yeah.
Tool maintenance is great. That's something I can talk about, and I'll follow up with folks afterwards. But unless there's anything else that the folks in the Chinese Garden Club, Caina, have questions or comments on, how to grow plants by seed. Okay, from seed.
Hello， 阿姑娘聽到我
係
講
咩
嘛？
植？
How about an indoor herb garden?
我唔識
聽唔到
咩
啊，係咩植物啊？
我唔識叫咩名喎，我種過佢冇嚟喎。
You got them.
因為好多啊。
All right,
種
I'm
咗
gonna
佢
wrap.
佢就唔供出嚟啦。以前咧供到一堆，我唔知叫咩名。
All right, I'm gonna actually wrap things up for today. And Caina, unless there's something I'm missing that they're asking or requesting. Hang on, I'm gonna switch to the Chinese channel. Caina, go ahead. Oh, maybe. Yes.
Well, I guess I'll say goodbye then, Winston. Huh?
Okay. Thank you so much, Janice.
Thank you, Janice.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yeah. And we'll share out the recording afterwards. It'll take a little bit to process, but I'll share it to everybody who was here.
Oh, good. You could
Okay, thanks
actually,
a
if you
lot.
could provide that to Master Gardeners, they'll
will.
probably want to put it on their website. Yeah, that's
I'll
a good
do that.
idea.
Cool. Thank you,
Okay.
everybody.
Thank you, Janice.
Okay,
Thank you, Janice.
thank you.